The Joe Rogan Experience.
This mushroom is figuring to be very prominently important for saving bees. And that's where our research has been astonishingly interesting lately.
And where is that thing that you brought in? What is that? What's going on there?
This is so to get some context to this, I think shamanistically mushrooms, plants, animals become important because of a plurality, a multiplicity of benefits. This is one example. Not only revolutionized warfare, not only allow for the portability of fire for us to save ourselves from the coldness, and we migrated into Europe from Africa. Not only did beekeepers use it for smoking, but fly fishermen use it also for drying flies. But we have found that this mushroom is extremely powerful for reducing viruses that harm bees. And it's been described today in CNN, a insect apocalypse. 40% of insects are under threat. This just came out, and this is really an all hands on deck moment. But I'm optimistic because I think we can find solutions in nature. So with my colleagues, and when I was here before, I talked about my work with the BioShield Biodefense Program, and these wood conchs are very strong in antiviral properties against flu viruses and herpes, etc. I use these ideas, and actually had a waking dream, and I realized that the bees were being infected by mites with viruses, and the deformed wing virus in particular is the worst virus. And so I contacted Washington State University. We started doing some research, and I'm really, really happy because I love skeptics who become my supporters. We published in Nature. Only 7% of the articles submitted to Nature get published, the Nature publication ecosystem. To this day, our articles in the top 1% of all articles ever published in the Nature publication ecosystem. Now, that's phenomenal because that's the most credible scientific journal in the world.
There it is right there. Extracts of polypore mushroom mycelia reduce viruses in honeybees.
And this mushroom, the amadou, reduces the deformed wing virus 800 times to 1 with one treatment. And then the reishi mushroom mycelium reduces the Lake Sinai virus more than 45,000 to 1. Now, these are wood conchs that grow in trees. And we all grew up with Winnie the Pooh, but no one made the connection before me, apparently, that bees are attracted to rotted wood because of immunological benefit. So amadou and reishi mushrooms, we found, and we published in this article, that high significance. And I think the reason why this article is in the top 1% of all Nature articles is that I've been able to present the theory, with proof now, that a natural product can have a broader bioshield of benefits than a pure pharmaceutical. Up to this time, there's been no agents to reduce viruses in bees. Now, the deformed wing virus is being vectored by the varroa mite. It came in 1984, and it injects viruses into bees. And so it's like a dirty syringe. And these viruses debilitate the bees and shorten their ability to fly. Now, look at that poor bumblebee.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
I mean, that is so sad because that bumblebee can't fly. Now, bees can pollinate up to 1,000 flowers a day, and the average flight time of honeybees used to be 9 days, 1,000 flowers a day. Every almond you eat was visited by a bee. So one bee can pollinate 1,000 flowers a day. 9 days was our pollination flight time. Now it's been reshortened to 4 days. So we lost by 50%. In the CNN article that we just showed, in China now, they're hand pollinating flowers.
Yeah, with paintbrushes.
Paint of apples.
Yeah.
So apples, cherries, almonds, strawberries,
because
tomatoes,
of the lack of bees.
Because of the absence of bees. So it's really, it's all hands on deck. This is, I'm really optimistic about the future because we have solutions in nature that we can now amplify and be able to deploy. And so one of my inventions, and I'm giving these away, the 10,000 of these for free, I've come up with a citizen scientist bee feeder that puts these extracts into sugar water, and we have a sign-up sheet up. It's for free. It says fungi.com/bees, and we're going to give away the first 10,000 of these. And this basically allows citizen scientists to help wild bees. Because wild bees are given about 80% of the benefits. And if you scroll down, we just got the CGI done if you go all the way down and then click on that video, and we just so here's the bee feeder.
And this is
used.
available on YouTube, folks. It says bee mushroomed feeder, bee mushroomed, all one word, and then feeder.
Yeah, and now watch. That's the bees visiting, and they're taking the sugar water.
Look how much they're sucking out of it, those little greedy bastards.
Yeah, and
that's crazy how it goes away so quickly.
And this is a maze, and bees are better at navigating mazes, and so you can see the bees going in and out. My grandson, who was afraid of bees, was really fascinated by this, so I got him to do this. And so these are something that we're going to make these available all over. And then I want to create vertical gardens in apartment buildings. The bees only fly up 200 feet. You create ladders then, ecological ladders. And then this is why the citizen scientists all over the world can take action to be able to help bees from collapsing. And then you station these in neighborhoods for bumblebees, for other types of bees. And then we have it with a Wi-Fi enabled device with solar panels, and then we upload into the cloud all this data about bee pollination visits.
Whoa.
So we can create a metric on the baseline of bee pollination services. So if you see bees that are declining and suddenly below a baseline, in Oklahoma 2 years ago, 84% of the beehives died. Now think if you're a cattle rancher and you lost 84% of your cattle. So the idea is to help bees' immune system, and if we create baselines with these bee feeders, upload the data, and this becomes a new form of internet because they have Wi-Fi ability. So it's a distributed network as well. But
where is the Wi-Fi on that?
Well, we don't have. This is in development right now. We're working with a very, very large computer company who's making all the instrumentation, and they're into big data. So we have a solar panel going in here. We have blue LED lights because bees are attracted to blue light, and they'll count the number of bees going in and out. And since bees are only flying in the daytime, we don't need a battery. And so the solar power will then upload the data into the cloud. They will create mega data sets. And then we can look at Africa, Indonesia.
How is it going to upload into the cloud? What is it using?
Is it using LTE?
Oh, so it's using like a cellular system.
A cellular system or low-frequency, long-range communication systems.
Can we help? Can we contribute? Is there a way that this podcast can help?
A lot. I want to enable people with solutions that they can teach their children the importance of natural systems, and they can take action.
This seems like a great one. I mean, I love this idea.
Well,
I think it's awesome.
I can afford to give away 10,000. I talked to this computer company that everybody knows, but they asked me not to use their name, and they asked how many do we need. I said about 10 billion. Billion. And but I will do up to my capacity, and then I'm hoping that we're going to give these away for free, and then eventually we'll create networks of hubs where I have now 40 patents on this and helping bees survive from these extracts, but not in Indonesia, not in India, not in Africa, not in China, not in Japan. I've open sourced it for most of the world. I'm basically I'm going to commercialize it so the haves can help the have-nots. And I think a lot of people want to help, and we're thinking about different ways of doing this. I'm open to all ideas, but the idea is to get maybe one person to sponsor 10 other people. They have a distributed network, their own social media community, where they end up getting in schools. We will open source the code for 3D printers. So that's really important for schools. So the code's going to be open sourced. But then if somebody wanted to make millions of these and sell them, of course, I wouldn't be happy with that. They have to work with me. But individually, we can empower individuals and schools to have the open source 3D printing codes.
We just have to make it trendy to have one of these in your house. Like, look, I'm helping. I'm helping the bees.
Hey,
if we just did that, it would really make a big difference. I know that's a gross way to look at it, but that works. My
grandson Kai is a perfect example. He was shuddering in fear of coming near to this. And my friend, Dr. Steve Shepard, entomologist, taught me something about bees I didn't know. Bees are moving so fast, and we look like we're moving slow. But if you move really slow, the bees think you're a statue. And so my grandson and Kai, I said, look at this, and you can see underneath, you can see the bees going in and out. I said, to move really slow. And then he got fascinated watching the bees. So he overcame his fear of bees. He was excited that he's helping bees survive. Now we've created something intergenerationally. And saving the bees is the number one bridge concept between conservatives and liberals. Everyone wants to save the bees.
That's number one?
It's a number one bridge issue between mending the fence, so to speak, across the political and social divide. Everybody wants to save the bees. Mm-hmm. So this is an actionable solution, and the scientific data out there is pretty disturbing. 75% of flying insects in the past 27 years, in a report from Germany that just came out, have disappeared. Now, many of your listeners are out in the country. I grew up in the country. Remember all the bug splatter you used to have against your windshield? Mm-hmm. You don't see that anymore because the insects are dying because of exposure to pesticides, monoculture. And when you have monoculture, you have what's called pollination deserts. When you have lots of biodiversity, lots of plants and diversity, the plants are pollinating at different times of the season. When you do to a monoculture, all the plants, like almonds, will all produce flowers all at once, and then there's no pollen available. So the immune system of the bees, due to factory farming, loss of habitat, deforestation, glyphosates, heavy metals, pollution, all those things are cofactors. But the nail in the coffin is by far these viruses. And so immunologically empowering and supporting the immune system of bees then it gives the bees the opportunity or the ability to be able to survive longer, do more pollination.
Is there a specific source of these viruses that they can isolate? Or are these a new thing?
Well, actually, there's a slide that just shows the pandemic spread of these viruses throughout the world that came from Asia. And it's now a global pandemic. All bees in the world are now infected with these viruses because when the infected honeybee, for instance, visits the flower, it leaves viral particles.
In the flower.
And then a wild bumblebee comes, visits it, and it becomes infected. So there is a unfortunate, I don't want to use the word perfect storm, it's a terrible storm of cofactors. And because, 80% of the benefit that farmers receive is from wild bees,
right?
But we can't count them. And I have beehives, and what happens in the colony collapse? You go out on Monday, the bees are happy. You go out on Thursday, they're all gone. I mean, it's
really that quick.
That quick, and it's not like there's hundreds of dead bees around your beehive. They're just gone, and there can be hundreds of pounds of honey, and the bees, they're gone.
So they go off somewhere to die.
What happens is because the newly hatched bees are called nurse bees, and the nurse bees take care of the baby bees. But when the colony senses there's not enough pollen and food to support the brood and the colony, the nurse bees are prematurely recruited to go out and find pollen. So they abandon the babies, and then the varroa mites are they just go uncontrolled, and they start injecting viruses. And so there are other cofactors, just like when you get an infection from a viral infection, you can get bacterial infections. And so there's a cascade of opportunistic infections as immunology is decreased because of these viruses. So
wasn't there a contributing factor that had to do with cell phones as well?
I'm really glad you brought that up. This is a contributing factor. I have not seen convincing evidence. It's a hypothesis that's not fully flushed out. There are some people quite adamant in their belief in this, but I'm driven by science and data. The rhythms, the frequency of the high of cell phones, there's an argument that's made is not in the same cosine wave of the wavelengths that we experience in nature. And so this is disruptive. I understand that. I'm still on the fence. I'd like to see really strong data and scientific evidence of that. But it's a hypothesis that needs to be tested. That's why we're looking also at low-frequency, long-range communication systems.
I think I told you this story. If I didn't, I apologize. But when we were on Fear Factor, we had a bee stunt where we had to cover these people in bees. And a local bee colony flew in to check out what was going on. And those bees and the bees that were brought there met in the sky and worked it out. And the beekeeper told us, okay, we have to shut down and everybody's got to back out of here. So we had to shut down everything and back out for like about an hour, at least a half hour, while these bees communicated with each other. So they're flying, a giant swarm of them flying in the air, trying to figure out why, hey, what are you guys here for? What are you doing? Why are you in our neighborhood? Like, oh, we're not moving in. We're just filming a TV show. Like, they had to work it out.
That is so unusual.
It was really weird.
That's extraordinary. You know? So when a new queen splits from a hive, a colony, they then take a big group of them with them. So it's all about protecting the queen.
I just don't understand how they worked it out. There was no fight to the death. There was no nothing. They just sort of worked it out. And the other bees took off, and the bees that were there came back to their little colony.
Yeah, there's a lot of this is also I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's also speaks to what's called bee drift. And so when we publish our article in Nature Scientific Reports, actually I think the data is understated, because 10 to up to 20% of bees will drift from one colony to another. So we had treatment colonies and we had treated colonies. Well, because 10 to 20% of the bees in the treated colonies went to the control colonies, we actually diluted the differential, because we had cross movement of control bees and beehive versus treated bees. And so when we actually, I think, some of my other co-authors thinks we actually have understated the data. But when you look at the p-values of significance, they're extraordinary. P is less than 0.009, and that for scientists is an extraordinarily significant data set that is clearly showing the evidence that these extracts help the immunity of bees and help them be able to survive and do a better job.
That's awesome, and it's crazy that it's just a natural mushroom, but it makes sense what you're saying, that they built their beehives in these rotting trees knowing that these fungi were there, or somehow or another being attracted to it.
I like to say the first 5 seconds that I got that first patent award, my ego did swell. And then 10 seconds later, I said, are you frigging kidding? We're Neanderthals with nuclear weapons. How could I be the first one to have discovered that bees benefit from mycelium immunologically? But there's no what's called prior art. There's no evidence. And I mean, think of that. We have the intelligence of nature underneath our feet. And this is something we need to tap into. And the fact that we can show a natural product, if you had HPV, HIV, and you went to a doctor 12 days after having one treatment of these extracts, and your viruses dropped 45,000 to 1, any physician would say, wow, you're doing really well. And this is what we'll be able to see. Now, we've been trying to find what's called the mode of action. How are these viruses actually being reduced? Putatively, our strongest hypothesis now is as providing essential nutrients that are important for the immune system to activate gene sequences that attack the viruses and give a more host defensive immunity of protection of a further infection.
Now, does this work with humans as well? Like chaga is supposed to be good for your immune system, right?
Well, this is a great convergence. So traditional Chinese medicine and European medicine and medicine from indigenous peoples all over the world have been using these mushrooms. Is that now we're finding scientific evidence that folklorically the reputation of chaga, of reishi, of these mushrooms helping the immunity of humans, this is translational medicine. So, but bees is an animal clinical study. Bees have been stated as being, besides Drosophila, the second most well-studied animal in the world. This is an animal clinical study, past digestion, past what's called the cytochrome P450 pathway, which is your detoxification pathway, mostly in our liver. All animals use the cytochrome P450 pathway to break down toxins. And it's past the microbiome, into the blood. So this is an animal clinical study. And I think it's a gateway for us to take this as credible evidence that natural products can be more useful and offer a broader bioshield of benefits than pure pharmaceuticals that go after one molecule with one target, one set of receptors. Our immunological fields have developed in the complexity of nature. This is what our foods are. We're in constant biomolecular communication with the ecosystem. We've evolved in this complex molecular environment. And so our immune systems are upregulated through multiple stimuli. And that's why I think these extracts, because of their complexity, they build upon the complexity of natural systems that help our immune system.
So you have hope that this is something that we could eventually see being like a peer-reviewed, proven thing for human beings as well?
Absolutely. I do believe that's on the near event horizon. There's a lot of researchers now.
Pull this thing up closer to you a little bit there.
I believe it's on the near event horizon. It's something that we're going to see more and more. There's lots of clinical studies. For physicians, it's no branding, no selling of anything. I populate a website called mushroomreferences.com. I populate specifically for physicians. I just spoke at Singularity University, Stanford Medical School, in front of 1,000 physicians. I try to make the bridge of the credibility of the science for physicians who are just not educated yet because they don't have the resources or the time. So mushroomreferences.com, you can go to that website. It's got hundreds of references that then you can put in any symptom or species, et cetera, and you'll be able to find the peer-reviewed references. There's about 30 references, for instance, on psilocybin right now, which is an area of research that I'm particularly focused on.